Now, I'm challenged by, some of the early fathers of the faith. George Müller, for any of you who know a little bit about church history, and some great evangelists and pastors of the 19th and 18th century. George Müller is a great example of prayer. He lived from 1805 to 1898. He died when he was 93 years of age, a Christian evangelist, and he was the director of Ashley Down Orphanage in Bristol, England. And in the course of his lifetime, he cared for 10,024 orphans. And he built orphanages, and he also established 117 schools, which offered Christian education to over 120,000 children. Most of them were orphans. And yet George Müller never asked for a single penny in the course of his lifetime to build the orphanages and to take care of the orphans that he ministered to. All he ever did was pray. And Müller would, and when you study some of these great men of faith in the 19th and 18th century, and even before that, Martin Luther prayed on average 3 hours a day. John Wesley prayed on average 2 hours a day. George Whitefield got up at 4 o'clock every morning and prayed an hour in the morning, an hour at lunchtime, an hour at night, 3 hours a day. George Müller prayed hours on end, and how he was able to sustain his orphanages and be able to minister to all these orphans over the course of his lifetime was completely on the basis of prayer. And there was one documented example of prayer that was recorded by Roger Steer, who wrote the book George Müller Delighted in God. And there was an occasion where all the orphans were sitting at the breakfast table in the dining hall, and there was no food. I mean, there was literally no food. And so the kids were just sitting there, and George Müller said, "All right, kids, we're just going to pray until God supplies." And they started praying. And before they knew it, there was a knock on the door. And the guy who owned the bakery down the street said, "I just felt impressed to come and unload all this bread. Do you need bread?" And he brings all this bread into the orphanage. But then they didn't have anything to drink, so they prayed some more. And then there was another knock at the door. And there was the milk truck that at the time was a carriage drawn by horses, broke down in front of the orphanage, and the guys came and knocked at the door. He said, "Hey, my carriage just broke down. I got all this milk, and it's all going to spoil. I can't get to my destination. Do you all think you can use some milk?" And those are the amazing kinds of prayer, just to watch the way that God would supply, because a man just devoted himself to constant prayer. And in the course of his lifetime, the last 60 years of his life is when he really ran these orphanages and built them. He took in donations, the equivalent today, in today's dollar, of $150 million